Good day, everyone. Richard Cowperthwait for Northwest Access TV. Thanks for joining us. Happy to have two Swanton Town officials on our show today. Plenty to talk about in Swanton. Earl Fournier, the Swanton Select Board Chairman. Brian Savage, the Swanton Town Administrator. Morning, gentlemen. I should know we're taping this show on Tuesday, August 24th. Boy, actually, I'm glad I thought about that. Halloween a week away, and I noticed some flyers yesterday for the Halloween in the park in Swanton.
That's right.
And again, I'm not sure when the show's airing, but maybe before then. But I guess, Saturday night,
That's
October 28th, 5 p.m. in the park for some good stuff.
Yeah.
Boy, Halloween's been feeling kind of like Halloween weather-wise for a while, too.
Well, we're going to get a few nice days here, but by Halloween you'll be back to the weather it normally is.
I guess some warmer weather's on our way, but I guess higher elevations finally got some snow a couple days ago, last weekend.
Yeah.
Boy, what I used to hear was snow in the mountains about 6 weeks after you'd see snow down in the valleys, but I suspect that won't work out. That means no snow till mid-December, early to mid-December. I suspect that probably won't be the case, but we'll see. Anyway, Earl, big issue in Swanton, I guess, continues to be the new community rec center, unless you tell me otherwise.
That's one of the big issues.
One of the big
We've
issues.
got numerous big issues here in Swanton.
What do you want to start with?
Well, we're going to start with the community rec center because we did have a public input session, and I'm going to turn it over to Brian because he's been working on the input that we took.
I caught a little bit of that courtesy of Northwest Access TV. Looks like you had a pretty decent, pretty lively meeting.
It was a very good meeting. I thought the facts were, we went through, we had, of course, a feasibility study conducted, and I gave a report on that as to whether it is actually a feasible idea for the town of Swanton to enter into, and the report came back that it definitely is feasible. There were some questions raised, audience participation. Everybody was, it was, very well run, and we've, for the most part, have reviewed those. Betsy Fournier, the chair of the Recreation Commission, myself have gotten together and we went through the questions, most of which will either be addressed in the engineering and in the design process, or when the center is open and up and operational. The couple of the major ones, or the first comment was it designed large enough? And the Recreation Commission feels that it is. They looked at this 5 years out, for what our needs would be, because knowing that it would take from the time they started discussing it to the time that it actually is up could be as long as 5 years, and they felt that it would meet the needs of the community for an extended period of time after it's been open, based on the activity and the population of the users and of the community. So they felt very comfortable, and I have to agree with them that it would appear that it would be it's been designed to be large enough for the next probably 20 years.
I guess I should throw in, would there be down the road, if recreation becomes more popular in Swanton, more people participating, could you expand that facility? Is there an expansion option, or what you're looking at is pretty much what you would get?
Yeah, we hadn't really discussed that point. The design of the building, I think, would be able to be expanded. I'm just not sure about whether the lot would be able to do it.
That is the issue with that particular area.
Yeah.
We've had discussion. We met with the owners of Shelburne Limestone to see what would be available in the future. There's very little that would be available in the future. So expansion at that site is not realistic.
Not realistic.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that is the site. Is there pretty much a consensus at this point that is the site to go with?
That was the consensus. We did Of course, prior to receiving the feasibility study back, there was a committee that went out for site evaluations.
Yeah.
We had several sites that we have looked at,
Yeah.
and the parameters were they had to be close, if not in the village, close to the village, able to hook onto the village utilities, including as well as natural gas. And when it was all said and done, given the Swanton area's geography makeup of wetlands and things of similar nature, the best spot for the facility is at the proposed site at the adjacent to the Shelburne limestone property and the recreation fields.
So you have pretty good consensus on that. There's not.
Yeah.
Well, the consensus right now is that we're going to go forward with that site.
Yeah.
Now, it's possible that there's some things that could come up that might change that,
Really.
but we're hoping that doesn't happen.
Like, for example,
Parking.
So parking.
Parking, you know. I
You
mean,
definitely have limited parking with that site.
well, we don't have a handle on how much capacity we have for parking on that site, and that, as Brian said, you know, once we get into the engineering, a lot of these issues are going to get answered.
Yeah.
We're hoping we get the answer that we need. But, you know, we have to be realistic too, once we get everything in place. We got a lot more work to do before we can give a final answer, you know. But we're committed to doing it at that site right now.
Right.
We're
So
gonna do
so
our-
feasibility study's been done, so what's going on now? What's next with this?
Well, right now, we're waiting for the engineering work to be continuing, to come up with just, you know, what is the space required for parking, which there's a formula that pretty much, and the engineers, Swanton zoning, the zoning has a formula for parking based upon the capacity of the building for people. So it's like I think it's one parking space per 5 people of authorized capacity. So we need to come up with what the capacity of that building is. And I'm sure the engineers are able to do that based upon the fire codes and whatnot.
And how big a building are we talking? What are we talking?
10,000 square feet.
10,000 square feet?
Yeah.
It was, and for this to be financially feasible, it's going to be used as a venue for a number of activities. You know, the recreation aspect, basketball and indoor soccer, things of that nature. There's some rooms for people to have smaller function rooms, but the gymnasium part itself could be rented out to a group that may want to do a large dinner, or other large gathering, such as having a guest speaker come, and you could have several hundred people sitting in there. So that's where we need those numbers to be able to determine just what we need for parking space.
Right, parking, that sounds like a big issue, so that might be a problem.
It hasn't been addressed in it before, you know. I mean, we need to address that for sure. Doesn't mean that something won't happen at the site, but it could have an effect on what the final plan is. Because you don't only have the parking for the site, you also have the parking for the fields.
Right.
Which, you know, during the summertime, or even in the fall, whenever, you know, there's a lot of kids in there playing baseball, soccer, stuff like that. So you got a lot of family members coming in here. So if you got something going on at the facility at the same time, you know, it has to be taken into consideration.
Right.
Has parking been an issue? Is that a problem sometimes?
Not right now.
Not right now.
Not right now.
It's not been a problem, and it may get a little tight at times if there's a tournament or something of that nature using the fields, but has not really been a problem so far. Some of the other questions that were raised, you know, what's the hours of operation? Although those were addressed in the feasibility study, primarily, you know, it'd be a 7-day-a-week operation. It's going to be from like 8 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock in the evening. maybe a little bit reduced hours like on a Sunday. But then again, that can be molded if somebody has a request to use it early in the morning, and it can be, that can be worked around and molded around. Till we get into the specifics of the operation, and but it is definitely going to be, it's a 7-day a week, at least 12 to 14 hours per day. And what would they wanted to know, the feasibility study did not take into debt service of the construction of the building. That was not, it was only on the operations of the building.
So not getting into price tag or?
No, for purposes of the discussion, we have thought about, the last figure that was officially what the board had taken was 3.6 million.
3.6.
But for purposes of estimating payments and things of that nature, I rounded it up to an even 4 million.
Yeah.
And who knows at that point, but we'll get some more accurate figures, because there was a question whether this facility is going to be air conditioned. And nobody really knew that. And so that was a question that I raised, not at the public hearing, but it just
Well, that wouldn't have crossed my mind. Glad it
but we
crossed
want to
your mind.
use that as a venue.
Yeah.
And if you were, say, having a function in the middle of July with
Yeah.
several hundred people
Sure,
attending, we probably should look at having it air conditioned. So,
Interesting.
that's where we came out. We bumped the price up, but
The 4 million sounds, from what you know now, sounds like a pretty solid ballpark figure.
Well,
I mean, there's not a lot of detail work been done on it, but I guess the estimates comes from construction costs on a square foot basis. So I would say it's, we're in the ballpark.
Yeah.
and we'll know better, of course, once we get the engineering, and they'll have we'll get into the cost estimation goes forward.
And when should you be getting that information?
Well, hopefully soon. I have been in contact with the cross consulting engineers, and told them that we'll be looking for these numbers, and they please let us know when it would be available. So they know that we're waiting. We also would like a conceptual drawing of what the building will look like, and so that should be coming fairly soon. The other aspect was, we did for our own purpose. We wanted to see what an annual payment would be on a bond of. This is not the bond will probably be less than what it will cost to construct, because we're certainly planning on applying for grants. We are using $600,000 toward from ARPA. A lot of that's going to go into the engineering, but certainly there'll be a fair amount left to be applied to the cost of the construction. We just used some numbers on a 30-year bond, what $4 million would be, just to get an idea. But we are intent to apply for every possible grant out there.
Have you gotten? Is there any other? You've got the 600,000 in American Rescue Plan. Is that pretty much it right now?
That's it for right now. But we are, in the process of starting to look and eventually start applying here, I would say in the next couple of months, for grants for a variety of things, whatever should turn up, wherever it should turn up.
And the hope obviously is you obviously hoping to get some grant money.
Yes, obviously. And we did mention it that night at the public hearing. Anyone who wishes to make a donation, large or small, specifically for this project, please, they can do so by contacting me at the town office, and we'd be happy to make the arrangements for that to happen.
Is that any takers and any?
Not yet.
Not
Not yet. But we are. You
No,
never
sounds
know.
like a smart thing to put out there.
Right.
So.
Probably as we get rolling, we could also, a lot like the capital campaigns of a hospital, let's say, they will sometimes say this room has been donated by, and you come up with a price. And if somebody wishes to do it that way, we're open to all kinds of suggestions.
I'm thinking, well, I'm sure you've thought about this. Sometimes I see brick walkways, and in fact, I think I might have even at the St. Albans City School, they might have had something like that for the playground.
Right.
But there are different things like that you could maybe tap into.
That's right. Yeah, there's a variety. So we aren't, we're not going to leave any stone unturned when it comes to that. I mean, everything is, it's a community project, and so we are reaching out to the community, and if they've got other ideas, we'd certainly be willing to listen to them.
Right. Earl, we probably talked about this before. Is there a figure that you think you need to raise aside from whatever you get on the bond issue? What would you, have you got a kind of a rough figure in your mind, or you've got 600,000 now?
It'd be nice to get another couple of million.
You think that's possible?
It might make it realistic.
Yeah.
The affordability issue, I mean, the numbers that we got up from the, a $3 or $4 million bond payment over 30 years doesn't really, I mean, it isn't like a taxes for the average person, average house in Swanton is going to go up $1,000 a year.
No.
But, and I think it was in the $50 to $70 range, somewhere in there.
On a 30-year bond?
Yeah. But that does, we already went up $170 last year on a typical. So if you start adding this 50 on, and this, there's going to be other issues.
As you say, there's other things going on.
Then, then it doesn't, the whole impact of everything together might be a little bit, but it's probably not going to be affordable. So the more that we can raise for this, the better we are. The other thing that needs to be brought up here is the access to this site hasn't been decided yet.
Right.
And there is some concerns that, using Jewett Street has an access might not be the best thing.
When you say not the best thing, is it something you could use, but it just may not be a really good thing?
Yes, we could use it. It's being used now.
Yeah.
But, if we're going to have that kind of, that kind of traffic going through there. And, the fact that it's in the village and there may be younger kids, school-age kids going down through there on their own. Jewett Street's not a very good street. There's no sidewalk on it. It's very narrow. Houses are close to the road. And it's also the access for Shelburne Limestone. And in the summertime, Pike Industries, paving. And that creates a lot of truck traffic during the daytime hours.
Are there other options?
Yes, there is Blake Street. But that needs to be looked at because according to the engineers, there could be some issues with the stormwater. It might increase the cost, but it's not exactly known now. And, I guess a strong argument can be made, even if it does increase the cost, $100,000 or $200,000, isn't it worth it long-term to be off Jewett Street and have a more safer access?
So Blake Street would be the option. Any other options?
No,
that's it.
That would be at Blake Street or Jewett Street.
And the other highlight of the feasibility study is that this can be affordable, operational-wise.
In fact, that was on my list.
But it has to be operated properly. And this is something that hasn't been, nobody in Swanton has any experience operating a facility like that. So there is going to be a learning curve. The other thing, the feasibility study did not bring in the present operational budget of and we're still getting those numbers together. And I don't think it's going to change the bottom line that much. It might the first couple of years. It could increase what we're spending on recreation now for the first couple of years. But once it gets going, if it's, managed properly, and it should be able to you know, we shouldn't have to spend any more on recreation than we do now.
What's the town, what's the recreation budget for the town? What does recreation get from the town these days?
No, 150,000.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's what we appropriated last year.
And they do a very good job at raising
Yeah.
a lot of their own money, so I suspect that that's going to continue.
Yeah.
And as, you know, this is like venturing into a new business line.
Yeah.
And for that first, as Earl said, the first year or two in any new business is going to be a little bit more expensive, but then it should, as the center itself becomes more popular and more people start using it and whatnot, and more of a demand. So there's a demand for recreation facilities for various purposes.
St. Albans City, of course, going through that with their still pretty new community swimming pool.
Right, that's right.
And I think Mayor Tim Smith has said that the numbers have, I guess, worked out pretty well so far. But sent,
Yeah. So it's so I you know, once probably in year 3, when after the building is operational, then things will start leveling off, and that's very typical in any new business venture. So.
Right. We've talked before. Certainly, no, we're not talking.
One
any
more
voting.
thing I need to
Yep.
point out
So-
on that feasibility study, that the success of this facility really depends on how many people we can draw in the primary, secondary area.
Yeah.
It's not going to fly on its own by, you know, just Swanton. We need to attract people from outside, you know, Highgate, Franklin, Albert. But the demographics and everything show that there's a need and there would be a use for this. So this is where the issue, if you're talking about parking, then it becomes critical.
Yeah.
You know, how you access the facility becomes critical. You know, is it something that's convenient and easy to get into, or you got to pull over to let a truck go out? You know, these things become critical, and I think that's one thing the study. You know, people can say, "Oh, you spent all this money, you didn't need to," but I believe it was a very wise investment for the Swanton, because it clearly shows that this can be done, but it gives you it tells you, points you in a direction. If you want to be successful, you're going to have to do it this way. And you're going to have to draw them people in.
Right.
Sounds like the parking issue is obviously a biggie here. I mean, it's conceivable the engineering study comes back and saying, given the size of the building, you don't have enough room for parking? I mean, is that
It's possible.
possible?
It's possible.
But we need to know that before we get too much invested, and then, you know, we'll have to come up with whatever kind of alternative we can come up with, and I think we could come up with some alternatives.
Okay, and you hope to have that information pretty soon?
Right.
That sounds
Yes.
like key information.
It's one of the things we got to get addressed before we get too much farther in the process. You know?
Yeah.
We've talked before, we're certainly not talking any vote at town meeting day. Is a hope at this point, about a year hence, November 24, is that what you'd like to see when you get this to voters, if
That's
if
the
it keeps
best
moving
case
along?
scenario
That's
I
best
see
case
right
scenario?
now,
Yeah. This
Yeah.
is a lot of work that needs to still take place. That we certainly, you know, if we do it we can't rush the, you know, we certainly got to, this has been thought through, so, so it's going to take, I think, just that much more time, that additional work that we hope by November of '24, we should then have a bond issue ready to go. But there's, and we have a good handle on grant availability at that point as well, and it would be the key as well, so that people know what they're, you know.
So there'll be nothing at March town meeting, there'll be nothing related to the proposed new community rec center on the ballot in March?
It could come down to some kind of advisory vote, possibly.
Not
You know,
too
when we
bad.
get the parking numbers.
Yeah.
You know, because there is a difference, there's been a difference of opinion between the select board and the rec commission on this right from day one. You know, I mean, the select board had
And
concerns.
again, on the site or on?
On the site.
On the site.
You know, but we're willing to go forward with it, but we're going to have to address all these issues.
The rec commission, they've got another, what's their preferred site, a different site?
No,
Their preferred
this
site is
one.
here.
Right.
Yeah.
But we had questions about the site.
Okay.
Because of the
The other
access
questions.
to it,
Right.
visibility, everything else around in
And
that
there's still,
area.
those issues are still there.
We're still, the board is committed. In
Yeah.
fact, we passed a resolution that we are committed to checking this out right to the end,
Yeah.
basically, at that site at 10,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And if we can't get it to work realistically, then we'll have to look at something else.
Yeah.
But we're committed to doing that right now. But as we said, the issues have to be addressed first. We
Well,
just can't go into it blind.
Right. So what was the feeling at the public meeting and stuff? I'm sure there's some frustration. Some folks obviously would, I suspect you're running into, hey, can't you move this along faster? But is there, you think there's a pretty good feeling?
No,
Not too
it
much?
wasn't that.
Yeah.
No, everybody was, there was no, they asked, we presented the facts. It started that evening with the Rec Commission, giving Betsy Fournier giving
Yeah.
a overview, and then it was turned over to me, and I gave a little bit of history of where the board has, started with the select board up to present, and then the feasibility study. So we just basically stated the facts that we had, and the questions were, there was nothing to saying, well, what's taking so long or anything like that. No, everybody understood that we're doing the homework to make sure that this is a good fit and will be a good asset to the community.
And what do you hear from community? You think there's generally a pretty good sense that this is a good project? I'm sure obviously people are always going to be concerned about price tags, but
Yeah.
are you not running into too many people saying, hey, you don't need this project? Or sure, you get all kinds of opinions.
Well, Richard, you know how it goes.
Yeah.
There's the same people are always going to tell you,
Yeah.
you don't need this.
Right.
We can't afford it.
Yeah.
Then there's the people that are going to say, spend twice as much. It's no problem. It's the people in the, in between. And I've heard from quite a few of them. And the majority of them would like to see something like this happen.
Yeah.
But they want it done right. Affordability is even an issue for them.
Yeah.
So we got to make sure that it's not going to have a negative impact on, how affordable Swanton is for them to live in.
Yeah.
And then there are people that do have a concern about the access.
Yeah. And it sounds like a legit concern.
It is, and parking, they want to make sure that there's going to be adequate parking.
Yeah.
So overall, I believe if we can present a proposal that's realistic and we'll be able to get to the numbers that are in that feasibility study,
Yeah.
I think the community is going to support it.
Yeah.
And it'll be a good thing for Swanton. But it's just one of the needs we need to address. Recreation, but there's also going to be housing, and where we're going to get additional employment space. These are all issues that we're going to have to work on too. But in general, I believe it's something that the people of Swanton, would like to see if it can get done.
Yeah. I've asked you before about the good old LOT, local option tax, which of course St. Albans City and St. Albans Town are using to fund the swimming pool, a new town hall.
Yeah.
Does that issue come up with some folks once in a while?
People bring it up all the time. In fact, we got some numbers
We
the
do
other
have
day.
some numbers.
Yeah.
And this is very preliminary numbers. Basically, my assistant found unbeknownst to me until she called, that the numbers that we needed to calculate what a local option tax would bring to any town are published out on the state tax department website.
Oh, really?
So we took we got on into Swanton and what the applicable sales are, and then we figured 1% of that. So it would generate, well, of course, of that 1%, the state takes 30% of the 1%.
I'm sure the state loves communities doing that. The state gets its 30%.
And but we would be probably somewhere in the, and this is very rough, probably about between $275,000 and $300,000 per year
Really?
would come to the town.
And how does, maybe a stupid question, this is money to the town, where does the village come?
Well, this is what
that's-
my first
this
question
is-
when I saw
yeah.
the numbers
Yeah,
is.
right.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure that's all how they do that, because I know St. Albans City has their own tax.
Right.
St. Albans
Right.
Town has their
But
own
the,
tax.
the difference being St. Albans City and town are
Separate.
separate.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So this is where we would have to discuss this.
Yeah.
If they get into where you have to get down, because it goes by zip code.
Huh,
And if they go down, and maybe the tax department has obviously the geocoding to get right down to the final, right down to the actual location, but that's something that we have to talk about, or have because when we would submit the proposal to the state, if the voters approve a local option tax, it has to be with a specific purpose. So if the specific purpose would be,
Oh, is that if the vote, so in other words, the vote in St. Albans City, I mean, I think infrastructure is a word I always hear.
right,
but-
for
But when
infrastructure.
that came to a vote, there had to be a specific,
For infrastructure or
Yeah.
whatever, capital improvement
Okay.
or what have you. So there are some categories in the town of Swanton, in the budget, in the tax accounts, that benefit both town and village. And without saying anything, but recreation is one of them.
yeah.
So, that is, this is all, will be to further discussion.
Because as far as the state's concerned, I mean, there's one Swanton. I mean, when you hear,
Yeah.
what are we up to, 253 towns and cities in the
Right.
state? One Swanton, but obviously Swanton Village is an incorporated village in
That's
the
right.
town of Swanton.
That's right.
Interesting.
We'll be, doing further work on that.
Yeah.
So this is a very raw number we got.
And you talk about bringing this to a vote, is there, or not?
Well, we're not at that point yet, but
Yeah.
I do see it coming.
Yeah.
And I listened to what Brian said, but there are concerns I'm sure the village trustees are going to have.
Yeah.
Because, when you talk about infrastructure, there's infrastructure issues. There's issues in our village core, that need to be addressed too. And $200,000 or $300,000 is money, but
Yeah.
it's not going to lower anybody's tax rate,
Sure.
okay? And it's got to be, as Brian said, committed to when the voters vote on it. So, I mean, we're going to have to come up with some plan. It's possible, but we've got a lot of work to do on it. We don't even have a charter in the town, so we'd have to address that issue. That's one thing that would have to get done, or doesn't have to get done now.
Well, I've looked, and like the town of Montgomery has. Okay, the town of Montgomery does not have a charter, but they have a charter. Basically, it's a charter saying it's like a one-page charter that they will be governed by the applicable state laws of the state of Vermont, but we'll have a local option tax, and the tax information is
So it's a very simple thing.
very simple.
Okay.
Is that right? So the town of Swanton doesn't have a charter?
No.
Is that unusual? Most towns?
No,
Not
most towns
particularly?
just operate under
really?
the state.
I mean, South Hero went through the same issue, and they couldn't get it approved until apparently they had to go back and do that sort of
Really?
one-page charter thing
Interesting.
in order to get in there. And then, of course, it's going to take voter approval, and it's another tax.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't mean to
Any way
say
you
it's
cut
free
it, it's
money.
another tax,
Sure,
Richard.
people are paying, sure, it's not like it's free money, people
That's right.
in Swanton are paying.
Yeah.
But I guess the best thing is a bunch of people who aren't in Swanton are helping to
Well,
pay that.
we would, you can choose what you want to charge it on to a certain degree. You can have it on sales tax. You can also have it on rooms and meals
Oh, is that-
tax.
I guess
And
I've
you can have
seen-
it on alcohol tax, alcohol sold in a bar or restaurant.
No, that's interesting, because at St. Albans City and Town, I think most places hook it on the sales tax, or at least.
Right, but there's a 1% on rooms and meals. I noticed that when I've eaten in a
Okay,
restaurant.
how interesting.
So.
Well, maybe they do more than that. It's definitely on the set. Maybe it's more than that.
So the numbers that we picked up was for everything, rooms,
Everything.
meals.
No, I
Yeah,
guess maybe it is more, because St. Albans Town, I remember when the town proposed it, I remember the folks, I think Pie in the Sky, some of
Yeah.
the restaurants were unhappy, so, yeah, I guess it's more than.
And the other issue too to consider with the, local option tax, sales tax, not income tax.
No,
Because I keep saying income tax inadvertently, I don't, is, we don't have a particularly, we're not really strong and vibrant in our downtown area. And to be that way, it's the consensus of most people is it's going to be small, individually specialized businesses, people that do a good job at what they do, and they're going to draw people in there, because we're not going to compete with Walmart, and St. Albans City is a classic example of that, okay?
They say we're slugging it
Yeah.
out. That was
Yeah.
why Walmart got defeated the first time
Yeah.
around by the environmental board or whatever, just because they said it was going to trash downtown St.
So,
Albans.
the business is this something that might say, well, maybe I'll go to another town because they don't have that sales tax there. I don't know if that's how big of an effect that would have, on future growth.
Yeah.
But some business people in the Swanton, have made that comment.
Really?
Well, maybe you ought to get some more businesses here before you start putting that tax in place.
Yeah.
So that's one other side of it.
Yeah.
But most people seem to think that this is going to save us.
Yeah.
I really doubt if it's going to save us,
Right.
but it
Might-
will
might
be a
help
help.
them.
But it's certainly going to be limited to the area it's going to be spent.
Yeah.
People have the idea that this is going to pay for the recreational center. I don't see it happening because there's no money there now.
Right.
Right.
So we can't allocate any of that money for the rec center because we don't have a cent of it.
What would be, on a 30-year bond, what would the payments be roughly, Brian? Have you got, as
think it
you're
was
talking
like-
about what the LRT would bring in?
The interest rates, of course, have
Yeah.
been all over, but I think it was somewhere around 315, 320,000
All right.
on the full 4 million, which
Yeah.
is hopefully not going to be the case.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Interesting. So again, it sounds like there's certainly forward progress on this, but
Yeah.
still
Well,
some key information to be had out there.
Yeah,
so.
we've got a plan in place, and hopefully we can go forward and get this. We're all done discussing whether there's a need for it. Obviously, there's a need for it. Everybody agrees that.
Yeah.
We're agreed that we're going to try to get it done at that site,
Yeah.
and that's what we're going forward with.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll have some more answers here the next couple of months.
Yeah. And you got a few other things going on in town. What's kind of a next kind of big thing for you?
Well, we're going to do the budget, but I think something that came up exciting that Brian told me about the other day is the issue here with the Moore Valley Rail Trail and the bike group.
Yes, there's the Franklin County Mountain Bike Association, I believe is their name.
Yeah, I've seen references to it.
Yeah, and they want to build another trail to extend from St. Albans and follow the ridge line and connect with the LVRT.
No, really? Boy, I hadn't heard about that.
So they're going to be coming to our meeting, to a board meeting in November to discuss that. And they've, because that trail will be in the town of Swanton will be on private property, so they have to talk to the property owners.
Have they started on that? Do you know? They
No, this is still in the
Infancy,
in
kind
the
of.
infancy. The trail on the St. Albans end goes in the St. Albans Town Forest, so it's town property there. They also are interested that when I explained to them that this would with the LVRT, but then the Fit and Healthy Pass at the trailhead of the LVRT continues on, and that ideally it would be nice, and it has been talked about, but no group has taken it on, to expand a rail trail into West Swanton through the wildlife refuge and improvements coming up
great.
with eventually Route 78, so it'll be safer for bicyclists. So they see
Couldn't be
that.
less safe, yeah.
They're looking at that as certainly an opportunity to expand there as well. So, and probably ultimately trying to cross Missisquoi Bay and venture into further
And
parts.
of course, you had the cool rail trail. Once you get over the bridge in Alberg, you got the rail trail that comes up pretty quickly. There.
Right,
Yeah.
that's right.
That's a
So,
great trail.
So they're looking for future expansion. So we'll be anxious to hear what they're going to say. So that could be a real benefit. In the meantime, the LVRT, of course, has opened a fairly large portion.
Yeah, I guess they've made some pretty good
they've made
progress.
some-
70-something miles an
Yeah,
hour.
Yeah.
right.
I think through Cambridge into Marsville, I think,
Yeah.
from here to Marsville.
So
I think.
we're hopefully optimistic that, of course, the work on the trailhead will be well underway next spring.
So no work until spring on that?
Just some preliminary
Right.
cleanup work around there. The grant has been approved,
Yeah.
everything. The last thing I knew about was the archological issue,
was
and that
okay.
was addressed, and no problem, so we should be able to go forward right off next spring.
And tell us again, what will that entail? What are you going to be doing at the trailhead?
Okay, well, primarily that will be the trailhead would be best way I can describe it is adjacent to Robin Hood Drive,
Right.
and it will be, it will be a parking area. First, people will be places to park, 16 or so cars. There'll be there will be portalettes, not bathrooms, but portalettes. There will be water available at the site so that you can get water to drink. There will be a shelter to get out of the sun. As well as, or the rain, as well as a bike repair station that has been donated. There'll be a bike repair
Really? Oh,
station.
great.
So it's like it's the start of the LVRT.
Right.
We prefer it's the start instead of the finish. But nonetheless, I mean, whichever way you're going. We're very excited for it. And so
Hopefully you get the governor up next year, who
Well,
just
that's-
a couple days from the
Yeah.
big celebration. when the rains come.
that's the plan.
I suspect he'll be happy to come.
And then we'll have we'll do the reopening of the rail trail, and we'll have the trailhead either under construction or maybe even finished. Who knows? So it will be. I have signs in my office advertising it. We just have to put a bumper sticker over and change the date.
No, that sounds great. Are you noticing some traffic coming in, from folks coming in from the east, coming into Swanton on the LVRT?
There has been. I'm not sure how because my office is so far removed from there, but there's been. I've had considerable emails and phone calls, or looking for different things to do or where to go, and then we also I've had to go up there a couple of times. To meet with when the archaeological dig was going on. I was there for a few minutes, and it was for this summer. It was relatively nice days. They were up there, and we were there. I was there probably for 20 minutes, and there was like a dozen bicyclists that came riding through. And then one other time I had to go because the gate. That goes on to the Fit and Healthy Trail was brought to our attention. Somebody came into the office to say that the lock was broken on that gate, so the gate was open. And our highway department, it was a Friday, and our highway department works 4 days a week in the summer. So I went up to, I replaced the lock, and while I was up there, bicyclists some were heading east, and others were coming in from the east. So, yeah, it was.
No, it sounds like that should be a real plus. I guess the state hopes to repair all the damaged places, I guess, sometime next summer anyway.
But I want to go back to, this connection for St. Albans. It has a resident.
Interesting.
As somebody on the Swanton Select Board, it concerns me some that this could cut off people coming to Swan. Because maybe there's more facilities here in St. Albans City. But the one thing that St. Albans City or St. Albans Town doesn't have is a Missisquoi Valley Refuge.
Yeah, you're right about that.
So, that needs to be a big part of that plan.
Sure.
Certainly as a town official, I'm going to push hard for that.
Well, that'd be tremendous to get. Well, Earl, you're out there every day. I'm not
Yeah.
there still once in a while, but as I've told you, well, when I see a bicyclist along Route 78 out there, I just saw a cringe.
No, and the other thing, Richard,
Tough enough driving.
Right.
is the state has a plan to
Yeah.
redo 78,
Yeah.
but it's not an adequate plan.
No,
not for
sounds like it.
not for that.
I mean, you get
So,
a bigger, a wider shoulder at least, if nothing
yeah,
else.
Right.
That's probably
that's
it.
about it. 4
That's it.
foot
Wow.
shoulder on each side, and probably no, and there's only going to be maybe a foot or two of dirt after the shoulder. But fine, you don't want to do it. Let's send them through nature.
Yeah.
And it's probably a better, safer way anyways. And it might be cheaper in the long run than trying to widen that road
Sure.
that much. So
you think there's some potential there?
oh yeah, they're going to hear from me. Really, they should
Yeah,
too.
that'd be tremendous if you could get a bike a rec path out to the refuge.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It would be a real draw for Swan.
Yeah.
And I think it would stimulate more businesses to cater to that recreational industry, that type of recreation. I believe it would, because people would really have a prime destination to go to.
Yeah.
And that's prime as outside areas. There is in the state, the refuge with the wildlife and
Yeah,
the
no, it's a
waterfowl.
great place up there.
And the town of Swan doesn't get much taxes or much income off from that. But we could benefit.
It's a few pilot bucks payment in lieu of taxes, but you don't get much.
So,
But it's still a huge resource
Yeah.
for Swanton.
of course it
I
is,
get it.
and I believe that if we're going to maintain and keep these resources in the future, and people are going to learn to appreciate them, they got to be able to see them.
Yeah.
And right now, it's very difficult for people to see the Missisquoi Valley Refuge unless they're in a vehicle.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy,
And-
talk about staffing. I think they're down to Ken Sturm, I think, has been manager out there for a long time, but I think they're down to 4.
Yeah.
It's a 7,000-acre refuge.
Yeah.
They've lost, I know, a couple
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
with just funding issues, but boy, it's a lot of work for a
So,
few people.
that's going to be a big economic development issue too.
Yeah.
Because it could create more small businesses that, if
Yeah.
you're going to go with this local income tax, there you got
Yeah.
more money coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you got money coming in from the outside.
Yeah.
So, we're going to have to, Swanton's going to have to stay on top of this, and we're going to have to, make an effort to get this done.
Yeah.
We're going to have to toot our own horn.
Yeah.
And we got a really legitimate thing to bring,
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I thought police coverage might deserve a little.
Well, yes, we
Well,
get right into that too, but we don't have a lot of details on that yet.
Yeah.
Other than, I guess I'll let Brian go ahead with that, at least start what we know,
Right.
what we have before us right
And
now.
I guess I should note Swanton Village is looking to, I guess they're voted. Of course, they have a vote coming up, November 7th on their wastewater facility
Right,
expansion.
water and wastewater.
But it looks like they're also moving on a new public safety headquarters.
Right, police and fire station.
Right.
So what, right at the present time, for police coverage, the town of Swanton purchases 56 hours a week.
8 hours a day, seven days a week.
That's right, from the village. They've done,
Hours 5 to 1.
yeah, typically 5 p.m. to
Yeah.
1 a.m.
Yeah.
And so in the meantime, the village of Swanton itself covers the village 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. And what the village has proposed and what the select board is going to be asked to consider is to, and because we hear it all the time, that people who are residing outside of the village want more police
I'm
protection.
sure they'd love more coverage.
And
Most of
it's very convoluted because you know, people just assume, well, gee, I'll call the Swanton police and it's 10 o'clock in the morning that something happened. Well, it's the state covering, and well, we didn't know when it actually happened, if somebody tried breaking in. So what they proposed is that the town and the village both would have 20-hour per day coverage, 7 days a week. That will obviously it can't happen overnight because they're going to have to hire more staff. But it would take away certainly the process of knowing who's covering, wherever you live in the town or the village, who's covering at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And so if Earl called and looking for a police officer down at his place in West Swanton, it would be Swanton PD that would take the call. So, but that comes with a price tag.
So ideally, it sounds like a great idea, obviously. Price tags a bit.
There is definitely a price tag. We are looking for those numbers, and that the village is working on those. Keep in mind that the first year would probably not be a full year. We'd have to work out the dates that they would do that, because they have to hire the officers.
Well, Bill Sheets, Swanton Village Manager, of course, a former longtime VSP guy, said he keeps telling me Swanton's the one department in the state that's fully staffed. Is what he reports.
That's my understanding, and it's true. Yes,
but they would need, if that happens, they're looking for more officers.
Right, and I think that they would be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 17 total. And they got 8 now, I believe. But
they're not all full time.
Well, the 8 are
full-time.
I believe 8 are full-time, but that includes the resource officer at the high school. So, but it's their department, and they really would have to address those issues on staffing. But we do know they would have to hire more. I mean, just logistically, you're covering a greater territory, more hours, they're going to need more people.
Let me just quickly throw in, I interviewed Sharon Bousquet yesterday, the Highgate Town Administrator, and asked her about police coverage. Of course, St. Albans City's been doing.
That's right.
And I think they were initially very happy with St. Albans City. Of course, St. Albans City now gearing up to take command again in St. Albans Town next July 1st. But
that's right.
Boy, it sounds like she'd be very happy down the road to get some Swanton Village PD coverage if possible.
Yeah, let me just say, I think what started to drive this whole thing is the present police facility at the village complex.
No, it's time.
Yeah, and the other thing is right now, the present police chief has been doing a lot of work out there, and there are a lot of issues with drugs around here. Coming from out of state, and you're very familiar. You see they've had it's an issue that has to be addressed. The other thing, so that means that, they need more space, so they're trying to figure out how this is going to be feasible in the future. Part of the discussion, of course, was to bring the town in not as a partner, but, basically we are. It belongs to the village, but it's not operational without...
It sounds like
what it's going to come down to is a grand list. We're going to be paying on a grand list for police coverage here in Swanton. We're going to have the same coverage as a village. Everything's going to be the same.
It sounds kind of similar to the St. Albans City, St. Albans Town situation coming up July 1st.
So with the new building, needing, other resources to bring in to make all this affordable. And, when you're talking about Highgate and Sharon, there has been some discussion that really, if this is going to really work in the future, it's going to have to be a public safety district. Is that how they're saying?
Well, I thought maybe regional policing, but whether we form a public safety district or just, however that's going to work.
Interesting. But possibly under that thinking, bring Highgate in as
Highgate, and Franklin, Sheldon.
Yeah, Sheldon has mentioned at one of their select board meetings about Swanton, and actually Enosburg. Enosburg did. And the
Interesting.
chief went to, told us that he went to an Enosburg
Really?
meeting, but right at the present time, Enosburg being, that's quite a
That's a hike.
far removed.
Yeah, it's a
and
hike.
if that officer up there needs help,
Yeah.
you know, it's going to be, so
Well,
that's,
I mean, right
Unfortunately,
now,
yeah.
the Vermont State Police, you know, in the situation they're in,
Yeah, way understaffed.
way
I
understaffed.
think
They're
Bill
not
Sheets
gonna
tells me
provide-
they're down maybe 660 or so
Something
troopers
like that,
statewide.
yeah.
Right, and this is, you know, and with all these issues of, you know, I'm more concerned about, you know, drugs being brought into this area and the commotion it's caused. I mean, there was a murder in Swanton, and that's what it was all about. And it does have effect on our younger generation.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we want to, I think people need to consider this. I know there's going to be a cost there, and maybe it's, with the final, at the end, it might not be affordable.
Yeah.
But what people need to consider, if we want to have police protection,
Yeah.
and we want to have police protection that we have control over,
Yeah.
because we have no control over what happens at the Vermont State
Right.
Police.
Right.
But if we had, we would have some control over
Sure.
this. I mean, if the chief wasn't doing a good job, you get a new
Yeah.
chief. You know, I mean, but if
Yeah.
the state police cut back, we can't,
Sure.
we just live with it.
Yeah.
So there's an opportunity here, it's, you know, and people need to consider that. And it may be a little expensive at first, but if we can expand this area of coverage, you know, then we can bring in more grand list value,
Yeah.
which should overall lower the cost for everybody, and we'd have some guaranteed police protection that we had control over.
Right.
And
Might this be an issue? Might this come up? Would this be a ballot issue to some extent?
yeah, this will be a ballot
March
issue.
town meeting or not
Yes,
yet?
it will be a
So
ballot
probably
issue
right.
at
So
March town meeting.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And from the prospect of
Interesting.
economic development, we're looking to grow the Southern Growth District. And so the people.
Down by exit 20 area.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the
So-
other side of here.
So, you know, people who would be
Not far away.
having businesses or living in that area of town, well, you know, that grows, they'll expect the services as well. So it all kind of goes hand in hand.
Interesting.
Running a police department is expensive,
Yeah.
and there's no way about it. But you know, we have to. It's part of the responsibility of any municipality is the protection of the life and property of its citizens.
No, I would think the vast majority of people would be happy with more coverage. Obviously, price tags always
Yeah.
come into play, but you would think that there'd be a lot of support for that, at least on the surface anyway.
Well, as someone on the select board, you know, I really feel we have to present this before the voters.
Yeah.
Because this is an opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, that's the way I look at it. It may not be everything may not be the way we want it to start with,
Yeah.
but as long as we can keep working together and build it in the future,
Yeah.
you know, I think we can have something. And if we can spread this over a wider base, then it becomes all more affordable.
Yeah.
You
Interesting.
know, and that just means, you know, at some point in time, we should be talking with St. Albans.
Yeah.
You know, there's probably some duplication here and there that could get out of there, that could, you know, lower costs and not affect the protection they're providing.
Yeah.
And we got to start thinking that way, because I don't believe that Vermont State Police is going to be the major police force in the state of Vermont in the future,
Yeah. We haven't
unless they
even.
make some awful
Well,
changes.
unless they would be primarily, as in some other states, of the really serious crime.
Yes.
Yeah.
And patrolling the interstates
Yeah.
would be about it.
And haven't even mentioned the sheriff's department doesn't seem to be having the best of times these days. And I think staffing issues, I think for those folks, and I talk to the sheriff once in a while, but
Yeah. Well, I don't have, you know, I'm not passing any judgment on the sheriff,
Yeah.
but I've been around a while,
Yeah.
and that is a political position.
yeah.
And it doesn't get, you might have a great guy, you don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
What being proposed now does give the local elected officials some control over what's going to happen,
Yeah.
you know, and how the place is run.
Yeah.
You
You
know.
hearing much public feedback? This is kind of just getting out. It's been out there for a while, I guess, but.
You know, I heard back from one person, he said, we don't need no police, I'll shoot him myself. But the majority of people I know are concerned about it.
I'm sure. I would think, certainly think so.
Yeah.
Down to about a minute and a half. Any other quick things you want to throw out there, Earl or Brian?
Well, we're going to start the budget process our next meeting.
Yeah.
We're going to look at that income tax, but there are other things too. There's some issues at the library. We're still with the facility, with the building itself, that we're still working on, and there may be some costs, unexpected costs there. We don't have that number yet.
Huh. There was some flooding in the basement. Was that
Flooding, and then the attic. Icing
Okay.
on the
Icing on the,
No, really?
the continuing icing problem.
Oh,
It's
really?
been since, well, for years, so.
Yeah, we need to address that, and we do need to make a bigger push on the Southern Growth District. There's some things going on. There's a proposed housing development that fits well because there's smaller lots,
Yeah.
more affordable housing. And then you got the St. Albans, not the town, the state garage going there.
Right.
There's a concern that it's starting to piecemeal, and we gotta, maybe come up with a better conceptual plan, but we gotta find some way probably to get some control over the land out there.
Yeah.
And that might mean a purchase, and how that's gonna go about, I don't know. And it may not happen, but I hate to let the opportunity go by.
Yeah. I guess on that note, we'll call it a day. Always a lot to talk about going on in Swanton. But thanks to Earl Fournier, the
Thank you,
Swanton
Richard.
Select Board Chairman, and Brian Savage, the
Thank
Swanton
you.
Town Administrator. And we'll try to follow this, all this stuff as best we can. Thanks to producer Alan Cunningham. I'm Richard Cowperthwait. We appreciate you watching us here on Northwest Access TV. See you next time.